Hi everyone, my name's Cameron and today we're going to be looking at homeostasis. In particular, temperature control in the body, your glucose regulation, as well as your kidneys. So what is homeostasis? Homeostasis is the maintenance of a stable internal environment in the body. Okay, this can be the regulation of temperature, the regulation of pH, water levels, your glucose levels. Okay, and it's basically to keep this environment as stable as possible so that chemical reactions and your metabolism that need to occur are going to happen at their optimum efficiency. Okay, and how does it work? So homeostasis is controlled mostly using these negative feedback mechanisms. So negative feedback, there is a stimulus, okay, in the environment or inside internally, okay, such as blood glucose levels rising, or maybe it gets cold. And what's going to happen is that stimulus is then going to trigger a response. Now, what makes it negative feedback is that that response is going to then be counteracted. It's going to be inhibited by whatever the change was. Okay, so you can either have the drop of one hormone and then have another hormone be activated by that drop. But then as this hormone increases, this one's activity will be inhibited by this one. And that makes sure that it just doesn't keep on going. You want equilibrium to be reached. Okay. So thermoregulation. Okay, the body creates a lot of heat energy in its metabolic processes. Okay, most of this is in the liver, actually. So the bigger the liver of a person, the more hot they are. Okay, or the more easily they get hot, the easier they sweat. And it's interesting to see that your body can get up to 46 degrees Celsius in body temperature if it wasn't for thermoregulation. Okay, now to put that into perspective, if you have a thermometer at home, I think, try and heat up water. Okay, so boil water. Now be very careful with this. I'm going to put a disclaimer on here. If you are young, do this with a parent. Okay, boil some water, pour it into a cup. Then get a thermometer and add some cold water to it and mix it around. Okay, until it hits about 46 degrees Celsius. Okay, and then feel the temperature of that water. It's actually quite hot. Okay, and then you can put it down and you can add some more cold water to it to get to 37 degrees, what it normally is. Again, it's quite warm. I wouldn't say hot, but it's quite warm. Okay, so the body is able to create and generate an insane amount of heat. And it has to regulate this heat, because if it doesn't, we're going to have the denaturing of enzymes and proteins within the body. Okay, at 46 degrees Celsius, you die. Your brain gets cooked and you will either die or have severe brain damage for the rest of your life. Okay, when most proteins denature, they can't be fixed. Okay, and so it is important to keep this temperature down. So what is it that we do? How does our body do this? How does it maintain a homeostasis with regards to temperature? So as there's an increase in environmental temperature, okay, thermoreceptors in your skin are going to send signals to your hypothalamus. Okay, your hypothalamus is like the thermostat in your brain. Okay, it controls temperature. The hypothalamus is then going to relay those signals through relay neurons, through motor neurons to an effector. Okay, now those effectors are your sweat glands. So that's when we'll have something called diaphoresis. Diaphoresis is when your sweat glands are going to secrete this sort of salty liquid called sweat. Okay, it's salty to help it evaporate quicker, because as it evaporates, it's going to draw that heat energy out of your skin. We're also going to have vasodilation, where your veins are going to increase in size and come closer to the surface so that it can get rid of this excess heat. Okay. Now, when it comes to a decrease in body temperature, it's stimulated in a similar way. So you're going to have receptor cells that are going to send signals to your hypothalamus. Okay, but these signals are going to be telling the hypothalamus that, listen, it's extremely cold outside. Okay, this is going to lead to vasoconstriction, in which case your veins are going to move away from the surface, okay, to conserve as much heat that's inside of them as possible. Your hair is going to stand on end. You get goosebumps, right? Shivers. Or that goosebumps is going to lead to your hair standing on end, which is going to insulate you from the heat a bit. And then you're going to shiver. Now, what shivering is the body's trying to warm itself up by moving involuntarily. Okay. So in general, if you're cold, go do some exercise, run, move around, jump around a bit, you're going to warm up. Okay. But if that's not possible, your body has this shivering mechanism where it warms you up and moves you without you needing to move. You see that? Which I think is pretty cool. And I had a student the other day that actually asked me, why is it that people's noses go red and their faces go red when they get cold? Okay. Why is it not, that we're all just very pale and because it's vasoconstriction, right? Your veins are meant to be away from the surface, okay? And this is because at that point, your body is trying to prevent your nose, which is like an extremity, it's outside of the main body, from freezing off, okay? It's sending blood here because it goes, listen, we are dangerously cold, and this could damage us, so let's send some blood to this area to prevent it from being damaged. Okay. Okay, so when it comes to glucose regulation, we've touched on this before, I think in the last lesson, so I'm just going to cover it quickly now. It's controlled by the pancreas. Okay, the pancreas is going to secrete insulin, okay, or glucagon. Now, insulin is going to lower the levels of glucose in your blood. So after a meal, if there are high levels of glucose, your pancreas secretes insulin. This lowers the levels of glucose by converting it into glycogen, which is stored in your muscles. Okay. Now, when your blood glucose levels are too low, it means that cells in the body aren't going to get the glucose they need. So it's going to secrete glucagon. And glucagon is going to convert that glycogen into glucose. Okay, and that's how the body regulates its sugar levels. Another aspect of the body that needs to be regulated is how much water we have in us. Okay, this makes sense because you can drink, 5 liters of water and it's not going to harm you in any way. Now, if we had no way of regulating that, your body would get water sickness maybe, or something like that, where you would have too much water in you. Okay, it's also a possibility that you would get dehydrated and we would have to constantly be drinking water. Okay, there's multiple animals in the animal kingdom that have adaptations to deal with exactly this, not taking on too much water and not losing too much water in some cases. Okay, when it comes to humans though, it is controlled by our kidneys. Okay, so this is called osmoregulation, sort of like osmosis, because that's the movement of water. So osmoregulation is the regulation of water. Okay, and this happens, as we said, in the kidneys. So water is going to be absorbed into our bloodstream. Okay, and the amount of water in our bloodstream is how our body is going to control how much water there is in our body. Okay, so the kidneys are going to be filtering out waste from the bloodstream as well as how much water it needs to take out. Okay, now it has selective reabsorption here. So although it's going to pump majority of its contents, its waste and its water and minerals and salts into the Bowman's capsule, okay, from the capillaries, specifically the glomerular capillaries, okay, it has selective reabsorption. So it's going to then absorb the glucose molecules or water back into the blood further down this Bowman's capsule. Okay. Now, the hormone that's going to control how much water is absorbed is ADH, the antidiuretic hormone. Okay. And if it is secreted, it means that it must conserve water. Okay. So that means that the water is going to be it's going to be reabsorbed a lot more. Okay, because we don't want to lose it to the kidneys, and you're going to have more concentrated urine. Okay, so there are some crazy adaptations out there of how animals deal with water loss. If you're curious, go look at camels, go look at birds and lizards. Okay, interesting stuff there on how their kidneys work. You also have to think about stuff like fish that live in the sea. Okay, they need water in their body, and they don't use seawater in their body, they use fresh water. Okay, so how is it possible that fish are going to be able to conserve their water in their body when they live in salt water? So what is this waste product that I was talking about in the previous slide? Urea. Okay. So urea is going to be a nitrogen-based waste product. Okay, it comes from the breakdown of amino acids in your liver. Okay, these amino acids, this urea is also quite toxic for you. Okay, so it needs to be filtered out, otherwise you get a disease called jaundice. Jaundice makes your eyes yellow. Makes your skin yellow, and it can be fatal. Okay, but that's why people go on dialysis, which we'll talk about, I think, in the next slide. Okay, it also comes from deamination. So deamination is when we eat too much meat, or just in general eating meat, which is going to contain a high level of proteins, which are going to be broken down into nitrogen, which is going to make our blood very acidic. Okay, so deamination is the breakdown of these nitrogens into ammonia, which is then converted into urea so that it can be packaged and excreted by the kidneys. So let's say your kidneys stop working. It happens to a lot of people, a lot of old people as well. Okay, this can be from damage sustained from an injury. It could also just come with age. Okay, but how is your blood going to now be cleaned? Okay, so there are two options here. We can either get a kidney transplant, in which case you have to wait for a donor, and then they're going to take this kidney and put it inside of you with your other kidneys. By the way, they don't remove your kidneys, they just attach this kidney to your blood supply, which is kind of strange. Or what they're going to do is put you on a dialysis machine. This will have to be done 3 times a week. And how it works is it completely filters your blood, your entire blood of your entire body. You sit on there, I think maybe for an hour or so, and it's going to take your blood out. It's going to run it through this machine, and in this machine we have something called dialysis fluid. Now, dialysis fluid is going to be at a certain concentration of salts and glucose and water with no concentration of urea in it, and then it's going to run your blood past that through a semi-permeable membrane, and your blood is going to do the exchanges over the concentration gradients, okay, that it needs to. Okay, this newly filtered blood without urea, without the waste products, but with enough water and solutes, okay, in it, are going to then go back to your body. Okay, and that's what dialysis is. So it's kind of like an external kidney. And it's crazy to see how big the machine has to be to do the job that your kidneys do in your body, and they're about this big. Incredible. So as I mentioned earlier, some of the disadvantages of dialysis is the fact that you have to do it frequently. You have to live close to a dialysis machine then. You have to live close to a hospital that has it, otherwise you're going to have to travel quite far. This only lasts for a couple days as well, and then you have to go do it again. Okay, so you're constantly basically living in a hospital, okay, every couple days, otherwise you'll die. You'll get jaundice, which is quite terrible. It's also a high cost, so this is not free, even though it's something you need to survive. You're still going to have to pay for the dialysis machine. Okay, and yeah, without it, you're going to feel pretty tired and unwell, okay, until you get to this machine. The alternative is that kidney transplant, as I said. The biggest issue with that though is the rejection factor. So because it's someone else's kidney and they will wait for a match, there's always a chance that your body rejects this kidney, and that can cause some serious issues for you, and you have to go to the hospital and have it removed. Okay. And if it doesn't reject it initially, you're going to have to take immunosuppressant medication for the rest of your life. Every day, otherwise your body will reject the kidney. And here's just a little summary of the advantages and disadvantages of dialysis compared to transplant. Okay, so as you can see, drink a lot of water, take care of your kidneys because they do a lot for us, and if they stop working, it's a big issue, which is also why we have two. Okay, so take care of them, take care of yourself. My name is Cameron, and I'll see you in the next lesson.